The Duchess Mary stood before the gilded mirror in her chambers, but she didn't recognize the woman staring back. 20 years. 20 years of sleeping in silk sheets that felt like shrouds. 20 years of crystal chandeliers that cast shadows instead of light. 20 years of being the perfect duchess to a man who made sure she knew she would never be perfect enough. Her hands trembled as she folded another dress, a deep emerald gown Robert had once called too bold for someone of your breeding. She placed it carefully in the leather trunk at the foot of her bed, the same bed where she'd spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, wondering when the words had started cutting deeper than any blade ever could. "You're from nothing, Mary. Don't forget that I made you." His voice echoed in her mind even now, in the blessed silence of the afternoon. Robert was in London for Parliament, which gave her exactly 3 days. 3 days to do what she should have done years ago. 3 days to commit what everyone in their world would call the unimaginable. She was going to leave. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Ashford Manor, casting long golden beams across the Persian rugs and mahogany furniture. Everything in this room cost more than her father's entire estate had been worth. Robert never let her forget that either. "Your father was a country gentleman with more debts than sense. You should be grateful I looked past that embarrassment." Mary closed her eyes against the memory, but it came anyway. Their 10th anniversary dinner, when she'd tried to share a childhood story about her father teaching her to ride. Robert had laughed, that cold, cutting laugh that made the servants look away. How quaint, the bankrupt baron playing gentleman farmer. "Tell me, darling, did he teach you anything useful, or just how to fall from grace?" The other dinner guests had offered uncomfortable smiles. She learned to smile back, to swallow the humiliation with her wine, to change the subject gracefully. That's what a good duchess did. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Your Grace?" It was Margaret, her lady's maid, and one of the few people in this vast house who looked at her with something resembling kindness. "I've brought the items you requested." Mary opened the door just wide enough for Margaret to slip inside. The older woman carried a simple carpet bag, the kind a governess might use, not the kind of luggage a duchess would ever be seen with. "Are you certain about this, my lady?" Margaret's weathered face creased with worry as she set the bag down. "His Grace, when he discovers, he's going to rage either way, Margaret." Mary's voice was steadier than she felt. "Whether I'm here or not, at least this way, I won't have to hear it." She'd heard enough. 20 years of, "You're too sensitive," and "Must you embarrass me with your emotions?" 20 years of, "Your family's tainted blood must be showing," whenever she dared to have an opinion. 20 years of watching him be charming to everyone else while saving his cruelty exclusively for her. The breaking point had come 3 weeks ago, on Olivia's 18th birthday. Their daughter had been radiant in her white gown, waltzing with a young earl's son, her laughter floating across the ballroom like music. Mary had smiled, remembering herself at that age, still believing in love and fairy tales. "She has your looks, unfortunately," Robert had murmured beside her, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Passable enough, but let's hope she inherited my intelligence. We'd hate for her to make the same desperate match you did." Something had broken in her then, not shattered. That would have been too dramatic, too visible. No, it was quieter than that, like a door closing softly but firmly, the lock clicking into place. She would not let Olivia grow up thinking this was what marriage looked like. She would not let Liam believe this was how a man treated his wife. Mary moved to her writing desk and picked up the 3 letters she'd written. One for Olivia, one for Liam, one for Robert. She wouldn't tell them where she was going. She couldn't, not yet, but she would tell them why. The clock on the mantel chimed 4 times. In exactly 2 hours, she would board a train to somewhere Robert's title meant nothing and his words couldn't follow. What would you do if you had to choose between your dignity and your duty? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Mary pressed her hand against her stomach, trying to calm the storm of fear and exhilaration warring inside her. She was 42 years old, and for the first time in 2 decades, she was about to make a choice that was entirely her own. The Duchess of Ashford was about to disappear, and somewhere deep inside, Beneath all the fear and uncertainty, Mary Thornton, the girl she'd been before the title, before Robert, was finally waking up. The letters felt heavier than they should. Mary sat at her writing desk, staring at the 3 sealed envelopes arranged in a neat row. 20 years of silence, and now she had to find words that could explain everything. Words that wouldn't sound like excuses or accusations, but simply truth. She picked up Olivia's letter first, running her thumb over her daughter's name written in careful script. Olivia. Beautiful, intelligent, tender-hearted Olivia. At 18, she was everything Mary had once been, full of hope, romantic dreams, and a dangerous willingness to believe the best in people, especially her father. That was what hurt most. The children didn't see it. How could they? Robert was a master of performance. In front of Liam and Olivia, he was the distinguished Duke of Ashford, firm but fair, commanding but caring. He saved his venom for private moments, for when it was just the two of them, for when there were no witnesses to his carefully crafted cruelty. "Mother's just tired," he would say with practiced concern whenever Mary's composure slipped at dinner. "She's always been fragile. Runs in her family, I'm afraid." Fragile. That word had become his favorite weapon. Mary set Olivia's letter down and picked up Liam's. Her son was 21 now, already taking on responsibilities at the estate, already molding himself into his father's image. That terrified her more than anything. She'd watched Liam absorb Robert's mannerisms, the way he dismissed servants with a wave, the way he spoke over people he deemed less important, the slight curl of his lip when someone mentioned Mary's family. Last month, she'd overheard him speaking to a young maid who'd accidentally spilled tea. "Good God, are all country girls this clumsy? Perhaps we should stick to hiring from London." The same tone, the same casual cruelty dressed up as observation. Mary had pulled him aside later, tried to speak to him about kindness, about the weight words could carry. Liam had looked at her with such confusion. "Mother, I was only joking. You're too sensitive about these things. Father's right. You do take everything to heart." She'd stopped trying after that, but she wouldn't stop hoping. That's what the letter was for. A seed planted, truth told, a chance that someday Liam might understand that strength didn't require diminishing others. The third letter, Robert's, remained face down on the desk. She couldn't look at it yet. Instead, Mary stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the manicured gardens of Ashford Manor. 23 years ago, she'd arrived here as a bride of 22, barely able to believe her fortune. Robert had been charming during their courtship, attentive. He'd called her beautiful, interesting, refreshing. Her father, drowning in debts and desperate to see his daughter secure, had called it a miracle. A duke, interested in a mere baron's daughter with nothing but a pretty face and a kind heart to recommend her. The first cut had come on their wedding night. "You needn't look so pleased with yourself," Robert had said, already turning away from her. "We both know why this marriage happened. Your father needed my money, and I needed an heir. Let's not pretend this is a love match." She'd told herself he was nervous, that it would get better. It got worse. The criticisms started small. Her laugh was too loud. Her opinions are too simple. Her taste is too provincial. Then came the comparisons, to his mother, to other duchesses, to women of proper breeding who knew instinctively what she had to learn. "Really, Mary, must I explain everything? Ladies of quality don't speak so freely about their feelings. It's common." Her family became his favorite target. Every time her mother visited, Robert would spend the following week making comments about provincial manners and the smell of desperation that follows old money pretending to be respectable. When her father died 6 years ago, Robert had forbidden her from weeping at the funeral. "Control yourself. You're a duchess now. Act like it." She'd cried anyway, silently until her ribs ached from holding in the sobs. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was the way he made her doubt reality. When she tried to tell him he'd hurt her, he'd look at her with such bewilderment. "Hurt you? Darling, I simply stated a fact. If you choose to be wounded by truth, that's hardly my fault. This is exactly what I mean about your fragility. 20 years of that, 20 years of being told her pain wasn't real, wasn't valid, wasn't worth acknowledging." Mary pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. She wasn't fragile. She'd survived 2 decades of death by 1,000 cuts. She'd raised 2 children while slowly disappearing inside herself. She'd maintained a household, hosted countless dinners, performed the role of devoted duchess while dying inside. That wasn't fragility, that was endurance. But endurance had its limits, and she'd finally reached hers. Margaret appeared in the doorway. "Your Grace, the carriage is ready. The driver thinks you're going to visit the orphanage in town." Mary nodded. Another lie to add to the carefully constructed plan. But this lie had a purpose. It was buying her freedom. She gathered the letters, placing them in a neat row on Robert's desk, where he'd find them when he returned. Then Duchess Mary walked out of her chambers and didn't look back. The train station was smaller than Mary remembered. She'd only been here once before, 17 years ago, when her mother had fallen ill. Robert had begrudgingly allowed the visit, but made sure she knew it was beneath a duchess to travel without proper escort and fanfare. Now, dressed in a simple gray traveling dress with her hair tucked beneath a plain bonnet, Mary looked like any other respectable widow or governess, invisible, unremarkable, free. Margaret had given her enough money to last several months if she was careful. The carpet bag held 2 dresses, a nightgown, her mother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry Robert couldn't claim as part of the Ashford collection, and a small leather journal she'd kept hidden for years. Mary purchased a ticket to Dover with hands that had finally stopped shaking. From there, she would decide. Perhaps France. Perhaps just a small coastal town where no one knew the Duke of Ashford or cared about duchesses and their duties. She was 20 minutes from departure when she heard the voice. "Mother?" Mary's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly, praying she'd imagined it. But there stood Olivia in the station entrance, her face flushed from running, her eyes wide with confusion and something that looked terribly like betrayal. "Olivia!" Mary's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "Margaret came to me." Olivia walked closer, staring at her mother's plain dress, the carpet bag, the ticket clutched in Mary's gloved hand. "She was crying. She said you were leaving. I told her she was mad. That you would never—" Her voice broke. "But it's true, you're actually leaving." Mary wanted to run. The train would board in 15 minutes. She could still make it. She could disappear into the crowd, onto the platform, into a new life. But this was her daughter, her beautiful girl who still believed in fairy tales. "I have to," Mary said quietly. "Have to?" Olivia's voice rose, drawing glances from other travelers. "Mother, you're the Duchess of Ashford. You have everything. A title, a home, a family who needs you. How can you just abandon us?" Each word was a knife, and Olivia didn't even know she was wielding them. "Your father—" "Father adores you," Olivia interrupted. "Yes, he can be stern, but he's a duke. He has responsibilities. You've always been too sensitive about his moods." She stepped closer, her young face pleading. "Please, Mother, whatever this is, we can fix it. Come home." Too sensitive. The exact words Robert used. Mary felt something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, but opening. Like a door she'd kept locked for too long. "Olivia, sit with me, please." There was a wooden bench near the ticket counter. Mary sat down, and after a moment's hesitation, Olivia joined her, though she kept her distance. "Do you remember your 18th birthday?" Mary began. "Of course, it was perfect. Your father told me you had my looks, unfortunately. He said he hoped you'd inherited his intelligence because he'd hate for you to make the same desperate match I did." Olivia frowned. "He was joking." "Was he?" Mary turned to face her daughter fully. "When has your father ever joked with me, Olivia? When have you ever seen him laugh with me instead of at me?" "That's not—" Olivia stopped, her frown deepening. "Last Christmas, when I mentioned feeling unwell, what did he say?" Olivia's silence was enough. "He said I was being dramatic, that my family always did have weak constitutions." Mary's voice remained steady. "On our 15th anniversary, I tried to suggest a small celebration, just the two of us. He told me not to be ridiculous, that sentimentality was for common people who had nothing better to occupy their thoughts. Mother, stop. When your grandmother died, he forbade me from crying at her funeral, said it was undignified. Please stop. Olivia's eyes were glistening now. I can't stop anymore, darling. That's the problem. I've stopped for 20 years. Stopped speaking, stopped feeling, stopped existing as anything but the perfect, silent duchess he wanted me to be. Mary reached for her daughter's hand. I'm not leaving you or Liam. I'm leaving him. I'm leaving before there's nothing left of me to save. The station clock chimed. 10 minutes until departure. Olivia stared at their joined hands, tears sliding down her cheeks. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, younger than her 18 years. I don't want to believe you. I know, but I do. Olivia looked up, her eyes meeting her mother's. I think I've always known something was wrong. I just didn't want to see it. Mary's heart shattered and soared at once. Come with me, she whispered. Olivia's eyes went wide. What? Come with me. Right now. We'll start over. Both of us. The train whistle blew, and Olivia had to choose. Olivia stared at the train, then back at her mother, her face a portrait of agony. I can't, she whispered. Mother, I can't just leave. What about Liam? What about... It's all right. Mary squeezed her daughter's hand one last time, then let go. Her heart was breaking, but she understood. She'd had 20 years to reach this moment. Olivia had only had 20 minutes. I know, but you're still going. It wasn't a question. Yes. The train whistle blew again. 5 minutes. Olivia stood abruptly, pacing in a small circle, her hands pressed to her temples. This is madness. Father will be furious. He'll send people looking for you. He'll... She stopped, her face paling. Oh God, he's going to blame me. I was here. I spoke to you. I could have stopped you, and I didn't. Mary stood, gripping her daughter's shoulders firmly. Listen to me, Olivia. When he rages, and he will rage, you tell him you tried. You tell him I was hysterical, irrational, that you begged me to return and I refused. You cry if you can manage it. You let him believe you're just as much a victim of my madness as he is. That's lying. That's surviving. Mary's voice was steel now. Your father doesn't accept the truth, darling. He accepts the version of events that makes him look best. Give him that version. Olivia's breath came in short gasps, but she nodded. And Olivia? Mary softened her grip. The letter I left you. Read it when you're alone. Really read it. Everything I never said I wrote down. Mother! All aboard! Mary grabbed her carpet bag and moved toward the platform, but Olivia caught her arm. Where will you go? It's better if you don't know. That way you can't tell him, even if he demands it. Tears streamed freely down Olivia's face now. Will I ever see you again? Mary cupped her daughter's cheek. When you're ready, when you need me, send word to Margaret. She'll know how to find me, I promise. Then she turned and walked toward the train before her resolve could crumble. She found an empty compartment and pressed herself against the window. Olivia stood on the platform looking lost and impossibly young. As the train lurched forward, Olivia raised one hand in a small, heartbroken wave. Mary waved back until her daughter disappeared from view. 3 days later, Dover proved too close, too obvious. Mary took a mail coach to a village called Millbrook, tucked in the countryside of Kent. It was small enough to be overlooked, large enough to have a decent inn and a lending library. She took a room under the name Mrs. Thornton, her maiden name, the one Robert had always spoken with such disdain. Here it felt like reclaiming something stolen. The first 2 days she barely left her room. She'd expected relief, freedom, joy. Instead, she felt untethered, like a ship cut loose from anchor. 20 years of routine, of knowing exactly what was expected of her every hour of every day. And now, nothing. No schedule, no demands. No one is watching. No one is cutting her down with words. On the 3rd day, she forced herself to the small tea room downstairs. The innkeeper's wife, Mrs. Davies, was a round, cheerful woman who asked no prying questions, but offered extra jam with genuine warmth. You look like you could use a good meal, Mrs. Thornton. Too thin by half. Mary almost wept at the simple kindness. That afternoon, a letter arrived. Her hands shook as she recognized Margaret's careful handwriting. She retreated to her room and broke the seal. Your Grace. His Grace returned yesterday. The house has been in turmoil. He has raged as you predicted. Lady Olivia held firm to the story you gave her, though it cost her dearly. He confined her to her chambers for failing to stop you. Lord Liam was dispatched to London to make inquiries. His Grace has hired investigators. He is telling society you've had a nervous breakdown, that you're not well, that he's desperately searching for you for your own protection. People believe him, they pity him. Be careful, he will not let this stand. His pride cannot bear it. You were right to leave. I see that now. God keep you safe. Memo. Mary's hands trembled as she set the letter down. Robert was hunting her, and he had all the resources of a duke at his disposal. She thought leaving would be the hardest part. She'd been wrong. Have you ever had to choose between your safety and what others expected of you? Share your story below. Mary had been in Millbrook for 2 weeks when the stranger arrived. She'd fallen into a quiet routine. Breakfast in her room, walks through the village in the afternoon, evenings spent reading by the fire in the inn's small parlor. The anonymity was intoxicating. No one here knew she was a duchess. No one watched her every move, waiting for her to make a mistake Robert could criticize. She was having tea when Mrs. Davies appeared at the parlor door, wringing her hands. Mrs. Thornton, there's a gentleman here asking for you. Says he's your solicitor. Mary's cup clattered against its saucer. I don't have a solicitor. Shall I send him away? Before Mary could answer, a man appeared behind Mrs. Davies, elderly, distinguished, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. Mrs. Thornton, or should I say, Your Grace? He bowed slightly. My name is Thomas Whitmore. I was your father's solicitor. I apologize for the intrusion, but it's urgent that we speak. Mary's throat tightened. How did you find me? Your lady's maid was quite resourceful. She knew I'd been searching for you. He glanced at Mrs. Davies, who was watching with undisguised curiosity. Perhaps somewhere private? 10 minutes later, they sat in Mary's small room, the door firmly closed. I'm going to ask you a question, Your Grace, Whitmore began, and I need you to answer honestly. Why did you marry the Duke of Ashford? Mary blinked. I don't see how that's relevant. Please humor an old man. She sighed. My father was in debt. Robert offered marriage. It was practical. And your father's debts? Do you know how much he owed? Robert said they were substantial, enough to ruin us. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Your Grace, your father owed exactly £300, a gentleman's debt from some unfortunate investments. Manageable, certainly not ruinous. Mary stared at him. That can't be right. Robert said, The Duke lied to you. Whitmore opened his leather case and withdrew a stack of papers. Your father was not wealthy, but he was far from desperate. When the Duke approached him with an offer of marriage, your father was actually hesitant. He thought you deserved a love match. The room seemed to tilt. Then why did he agree? Because the Duke told him that you'd already expressed interest, that you were in love with him. Your father wanted your happiness above all else. Mary's hand flew to her mouth. No, there's more. Whitmore pulled out another document. Your mother's family, the Havertons, were quite wealthy. When your maternal grandmother died 8 years ago, she left a substantial inheritance, £15,000 to be held in trust for you. 15,000. Mary couldn't breathe. The Duke has been collecting interest for the past 8 years. As your husband, he has control of the funds, but the principal belongs to you. According to the terms of the trust, if you were to legally separate from him, the full amount would revert to your control. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. This was why Robert had never let her leave, why he'd isolated her, controlled her, made her believe she was worthless. Why did he convince her that she came from nothing and owed him everything? She wasn't trapped by duty or marriage vows. She was trapped by £15,000. Why didn't anyone tell me? Her voice shook. Your mother didn't know. The inheritance came through a distant aunt. The solicitor sent the documents to Ashford Manor. The Duke intercepted everything. Mary stood abruptly, pacing to the window. 20 years. 20 years of being told she was worthless, came from nothing, should be grateful for his mercy, all while he was stealing her inheritance. Your Grace, Whitmore said gently, there's a reason I've been searching for you. If you're willing to make a formal claim of separation, that money is yours. Enough to live independently, comfortably. You would never have to return to him. He'll fight it. He has power, connections. And you have the law on your side. More importantly, you have documentation of the trust. He can claim you're unstable all he wants, but he cannot claim ownership of money that legally belongs to you. Whitmore leaned forward. I won't lie to you. It will be difficult. The Duke will make it ugly. But Your Grace, you can win this. Mary turned from the window, and for the first time in 20 years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Tell me what I need to do. Whitmore smiled. First, we make your disappearance official. Then we go to war. The formal separation papers were filed 3 weeks later. Mary had expected Robert's anger. She'd braced herself for his rage, his threats, his attempts to intimidate her into returning. She hadn't expected him to use their children as weapons. The letter arrived on a gray morning, delivered by special courier. The handwriting was Liam's. Mother, how could you? How could you abandon us and then drag Father's name through the courts like common gossip? Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Olivia hasn't left her room in days. She cries constantly and refuses to eat. Father says it's because of your selfishness, your instability. I didn't want to believe him, but what else can I think? You left without a word. You're claiming Father mistreated you, Father who gave you everything. The scandal is everywhere. People are talking. Our family name is being dragged through the mud because you couldn't fulfill your duties as a wife and mother. If you ever loved us, you'll drop this madness and come home. If you don't, then I suppose we know where your true loyalties lie. Don't write back. I don't want to hear your excuses. Liam. Mary read it 3 times, each word a fresh wound. She could hear Robert's voice in every line, his manipulation dressed up in her son's handwriting. The second blow came that afternoon. Whitmore arrived looking grave. Your Grace, we have a problem. The Duke has filed a counter-petition. He's claiming you're mentally unfit, that you've had a complete breakdown. He's petitioning to have you committed to a sanitarium for your own protection. He can't do that. He's a duke with influential friends and a reputation to protect. He has 3 physicians prepared to testify that you've shown signs of hysteria, delusions, and instability for years. Whitmore set down his papers heavily. He's also frozen the trust. He's arguing that since you're mentally incompetent, he should retain control of all finances. Mary sank into her chair. Can he win? If the judge believes his physicians over our documentation? Yes. That evening, a 3rd letter arrived. This one was from Olivia, and it broke her completely. Mother, Father brought a doctor to see me. He said I'm suffering from nervous exhaustion brought on by your abandonment. Father says if you loved me, you would never have left. He says you were always fragile, always troubled, and now you've broken entirely. I read your letter like you asked. I read it over and over. I want to believe you, but everyone says you're unwell. Even the doctor. Even Margaret. Father dismissed her for helping you. She's gone, and it's my fault for telling him she knew where you were. I'm so confused, Mother. I don't know what's real anymore. Father says if you drop the legal proceedings and come home quietly, he'll forgive everything. He'll get you help. We can be a family again. Please, Mother, I'm begging you. Just come home. Olivia. Mary sat alone in her room that night, the 3 letters spread before her like accusation. Robert was winning. He'd turned Liam against her completely. He'd confused Olivia so thoroughly she didn't trust her own instincts. He'd gotten Margaret dismissed. He was painting Mary as mad, and the world was believing him. If she continued this fight, she might lose everything. Her money, her freedom, even her children's love. If she went back, she would disappear entirely. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. For the first time since leaving, Mary wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. She looked at the bottle of laudanum Mrs. Davies had given her for sleep. It would be so easy to take too much, to simply stop fighting, to let the darkness win. Her hand reached for the bottle, then stopped. Mary's hand hovered over the laudanum bottle for a long moment. Then she set it down and picked up Olivia's letter instead. I read your letter like you asked. I read it over and over. Her daughter had read it, multiple times, which meant somewhere beneath the confusion and Robert's manipulation, a seed of truth had been planted. Mary stood and walked to her writing desk. If Robert wanted to play the game of words and influence, she would remind him that she'd learned from a master, him. She wrote through the night, not to her children this time, but to someone else entirely. 2 days later, Mary sat across from Lady Catherine Pembroke in a private tea room in Dover. Catherine was Robert's older sister, a widow, sharp-tongued, and notably absent from Ashford Manor for the past decade. I was surprised to receive your letter, Catherine said, studying Mary with shrewd gray eyes that reminded her painfully of Robert. My brother claimed you'd gone mad. You seem perfectly lucid to me. Your brother has claimed many things about me over the years. Very few of them are true. Catherine's eyebrow arched. Go on. Mary had rehearsed this conversation 100 times, but now that the moment was here, she abandoned pretense entirely. Did you know Robert tells people your husband left you because you were too ambitious? Too mannish in your opinions? Catherine's teacup clinked sharply against its saucer. He said what? At dinner parties. Always very sympathetically, of course. Poor Catherine could never quite grasp her proper place. Drove dear Harold away with her meddling. Harold died of a heart condition. I know. I also know you manage 3 estates and a considerable fortune with remarkable success. But Robert prefers the version where you failed as a wife. Catherine sat back, her expression hardening. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand that your brother doesn't just diminish me. He diminishes everyone who threatens his carefully constructed image of superiority. Mary leaned forward. I'm not mad, Catherine. I'm just done being silent. For a long moment, Catherine said nothing. Then, what do you need? The truth. About Robert. About his first engagement. Catherine went very still. How do you know about that? I don't. But 3 years ago, I found a letter in his study from a woman named Eleanor. She wrote that she was grateful she'd escaped while she still could. Robert burned it when he caught me reading it. Eleanor Ashton. Catherine's voice was quiet. She was engaged to Robert when he was 25. Beautiful girl, intelligent, from a good family. She paused. She broke the engagement 3 months before the wedding. Society was scandalized. Why did she break it? The official story was that she'd fallen in love with someone else. But Eleanor and I were friends. Catherine met Mary's eyes. She told me the truth. Robert had spent those 3 months systematically destroying her confidence, criticizing everything, her appearance, her intelligence, her family. By the end, she believed she was worthless. The night before, she broke it off. He told her she should be grateful he was willing to marry someone so fundamentally defective. Mary's breath caught, the same pattern, the same words. She broke free, Catherine continued, but barely. She married a country doctor and moved to Scotland, happy by all accounts. But Robert never forgave her for escaping. Her eyes sharpened. Is that what this is, Mary? An escape? It's survival. Catherine nodded slowly. Then she reached into her reticule and withdrew a folded paper. Eleanor wrote to me recently. When she heard Robert was claiming you were unstable, she wanted me to have this. It's her testimony, signed and witnessed. Everything he did to her. Mary took the paper with shaking hands. My brother is a cruel man, Catherine said quietly. I've made peace with that by staying away. But if you're willing to fight him, Mary, you won't fight alone. For the first time in weeks, Mary smiled. Then let's show him what happens when the silent ones find their voice. The hearing took place in a wood-paneled room that smelled of old books and older money. Mary sat beside Whitmore, her hands folded in her lap, her spine straight. She wore a simple blue dress, elegant but not extravagant, sane, composed. Across the room, Robert sat with his own solicitor, every inch the concerned husband. When their eyes met, he gave her a look of such practiced sorrow that she almost admired the performance. Almost. The magistrate, Lord Justice Halloway, reviewed the documents before him with a frown. This is highly irregular. The Duke claims his wife is mentally unfit, yet she appears perfectly competent. The Duchess claims emotional cruelty, yet the Duke has impeccable character witnesses. If I may, Your Honor, Whitmore stood, we have additional testimony that speaks directly to His Grace's character. Robert's solicitor shot to his feet. Objection. The Duke's character is not on trial here. Isn't it? Whitmore turned to face Robert directly. His Grace claims his wife is delusional, that her accusations of mistreatment are fabrications of an unstable mind. But what if there's a pattern? What if Her Grace isn't the first woman to make such claims? Robert's jaw tightened, the first crack in his composure. Whitmore presented Eleanor's testimony. As he read it aloud, describing the systematic cruelty, the deliberate erosion of confidence, the same phrases Robert had used on Mary, she watched her husband's mask begin to slip. Lies, Robert said coldly. Miss Ashton was a scorned woman who is now Mrs. Eleanor Hartley, happily married for 18 years, Catherine Pembroke said, entering the room. And I'm here to testify that everything in that statement is true. I witnessed my brother's treatment of her. Robert's eyes flashed with fury. Catherine, would you betray your own family? I'm correcting a betrayal that's gone on far too long. Catherine took her seat with icy dignity. The magistrate held up his hand. This is compelling, but it still doesn't prove. There's more, Your Honor. Whitmore placed another document on the desk. A letter from Dr. James Morrison, one of the physicians His Grace claimed would testify to Her Grace's instability. It seems the good doctor has had a crisis of conscience. Mary watched Robert go pale. Whitmore read, I was approached by the Duke of Ashford and asked to provide testimony regarding his wife's mental state. A woman I have never examined, never met, never even seen. I was offered a considerable sum to state she was hysterical and unfit. I cannot, in good conscience, participate in such deception. Her Grace may be many things, but she is not the madwoman her husband needs her to be. The silence in the room was deafening. Your Honor, Whitmore continued quietly, His Grace doesn't want his wife declared incompetent because he's concerned for her welfare. He wants her declared incompetent so he can maintain control of her £15,000 inheritance, money he's been illegally collecting interest on for 8 years. That's preposterous. Robert's voice rose, the careful control finally shattering. She's my wife. Everything she has is mine by right. She was nothing when I married her. A baron's daughter from a pathetic, failing family. I made her a duchess. I gave her status, a home, and children. And this is how she repays me? With lies and ingratitude? There it was, the real Robert, finally visible to everyone. Mary stood slowly. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. You didn't make me, Robert. You tried to unmake me. For 20 years, you told me I was worthless. But the truth is, you're the one who's afraid of being worthless without someone to diminish. The magistrate banged his gavel. I've heard enough. The petition for incompetence is denied. The inheritance will be released to the Duchess immediately. Furthermore, the legal separation is granted. Have you ever watched someone's true colors finally show? What happened? Share in the comments. Robert's face twisted with rage, but Mary was already turning away. She was free. 6 months later, Mary stood in the garden of her small cottage in the Cotswolds. It wasn't grand like Ashford Manor. There were no gilded mirrors, no crystal chandeliers, no rooms she was afraid to enter because of the memories they held. Instead, there were rose bushes she'd planted herself, a kitchen where she baked bread without anyone telling her it was beneath her station, and windows she could open without asking permission. The inheritance had given her more than financial independence. It had given her the ability to breathe. She was pruning roses when she heard the carriage. Her heart stuttered. 6 months of peace, and still, part of her expected Robert to appear, to find some new way to drag her back into darkness. But it wasn't Robert who stepped out. It was Olivia. Mary set down her shears with trembling hands as her daughter walked up the stone path. Olivia looked older somehow, more certain. She carried a small traveling case. Mother! Olivia's voice was soft. Olivia! Mary didn't dare move, didn't dare hope. What are you doing here? I read your letter again. And again. Olivia stopped a few feet away. And then I started watching Father. Really watching him. The way he speaks to servants. The way he talks about you when he thinks I'm not listening. The way he twisted everything to make you seem mad and himself the victim. Tears pricked Mary's eyes. He caught me defending you last week, Olivia continued. I told him you weren't mad, that maybe you had good reasons for leaving. He said I was being hysterical, that I was becoming just like you, too emotional, too weak, too influenced by inferior breeding. Oh, darling. That's when I knew, Olivia's voice broke. That's when I truly understood. Those are the same words he used in your letter, the same patterns. And I realized, if I stay in 10 years, 20 years, I'll be just like you were, trying to survive someone who makes me feel worthless. Mary closed the distance between them and pulled her daughter into her arms. Olivia collapsed into the embrace, sobbing. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you sooner, Olivia wept. I'm so sorry. You believed me when you were ready. That's all that matters. They held each other until the tears subsided. Finally, Olivia pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm not going back, she said firmly. Catherine said I could stay with her until I found my own way. I want to be like you, Mother, brave enough to choose myself. Mary cupped her daughter's face. You already are. They spent the afternoon in the garden, talking in ways they'd never been able to at Ashford Manor. Olivia told her about Liam, still loyal to Robert, still convinced Mary had abandoned them, but Olivia held hope that one day he'd see the truth too. And Father? Mary asked quietly, furious, humiliated. He's told everyone I've gone to visit relatives. Olivia smiled bitterly. He's so concerned with appearances, he can't even admit his own daughter left him too. As sunset painted the sky golden rose, they sat on the cottage steps together. What will you do now? Olivia asked. Mary looked at her garden, her cottage, her daughter beside her. Live. Actually live. Maybe I'll write, or travel, or simply exist without apologizing for taking up space. I have time to figure it out. And you're happy? Mary considered the question. She thought about the nightmares that still came sometimes, the moments of doubt, the healing that was still in progress. But she also thought about mornings where she woke without dread, about choices that were entirely her own, about a daughter brave enough to choose freedom. I'm becoming happy, she said, and that's enough. Olivia took her mother's hand. Then that's enough for me too. The sun set on Ashford Manor's shadow and rose on something new. Two women who'd found the courage to do the unimaginable. They'd chosen themselves. What would you do with a second chance at freedom? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters. If this story touched your heart, don't leave just yet. Here on Olivia's Tales, every story holds a lesson, a tear, or a little bit of hope. Subscribe now and join our growing family of dreamers and believers, because the next story might just be the one that changes how you see life. Turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next chapter. And until then, remember, every heart has a story, and here, we tell them all.